All right, folks, before we get officially started, I do the official introductions because we are recording today. First off, how to use this platform. Well, first off, if you have any questions for Alan or for me, what you can do is go to your webinar control panel, and it has that speaking bubble with a question mark in it. Several folks have already said good morning. That is how you communicate with us. Alan cannot see your questions, but I can. And he has shared that we will wait till the end of the presentation this morning for him to answer questions, but you're welcome to post anything that you would like there. And then again, when we get to the Q&A part, I will ask those questions to Alan for you. Handouts. If the email that I sent got past you, you can go also to the webinar control panel, and there is a little icon that looks like a piece of paper with a paper clip on it, and all 4 of today's handouts are there, and then you can access those. Those are for you. Let's see what happens if we lose Wi-Fi. Luckily that hasn't happened yet in 4 or 5 years, but could it? Sure. Or you lose it on your side. If that happens, log off and try to log back on in about 5 minutes. If it's still not working, don't worry, we will get the recording to you. Let's see. At the end of this, you will receive an email from GoToWebinar. And it's not from us, it's from customer care at GoToWebinar, which is the same place from which you got this link to join. And it will have a certificate of completion with your name on it, as long as you are logged in as yourself. If you're watching as a group, and we do have a couple of cities that are doing that, then only the person that is officially logged in will get the certificate of completion, but then everyone else can use the agenda to self-report. Let's see. Remember that Alan, as he is a licensed attorney in the state of Texas, I have to say that this is for educational purposes only and not to be construed as legal advice. All right, so let's take a few seconds and then we will get started. Hello, and thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Sheila Bojorquez. I'm the president and CEO of City Hall Essentials, and we are delighted that you're able to join us. Today's presenter is Alan Bojorquez. He is the managing attorney of the Bojorquez law firm with the main office in Austin, Texas, but also we have offices all across Texas and staff members that are helping cities, counties, and related districts all across the great state of Texas. So welcome, Alan. The platform is yours.
Great. Thank you, Sheila. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this conversation. This is a really exciting time to talk about this. And if this information is new to you, we'll break it down and help you understand where we are. If your community has already embraced these concepts and are working on governing better, well, then we hope that this helps supplement what you've been doing and helps you take it to the next level. I think that one reason I find this such an interesting topic and such an exciting time in history to revisit these ideas and talk about these things is we are rapidly approaching the 250th anniversary of our Declaration of Independence here in the United States. And for me, as a local government lawyer, a municipal lawyer, a person who's dedicated his career to serving democracy, particularly at the local level, I think this is an exciting time to reflect and ponder and think about the way we go about doing things, and hopes that this experiment that we have called the United States of America still needs some refinement and some tweaks and maybe a recommitment, a rededication to the things that matter to us as a united people. And in terms of the timing, I think about the fact that there's many communities across our country and right here in Texas that are experiencing varying degrees of turmoil. This is an interesting time to be in government whether you're a lawyer like I am, you're a city employee, a elected official serving on a city council, maybe you're a volunteer on a board or commission. This is a time to take democracy seriously and think about what we as a people expect. What do we want? How do we want our governments to behave? And how are we going to conduct ourselves in the public realm? My day-to-day job is not doing trainings for Sheila. My day-to-day job is being a municipal lawyer representing cities. And one of my top clients that I spend most time with every day, if not every week, here in Central Texas had two issues recently dealing with ICE, the Federal Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. You know, two weeks ago, folks at City Hall showed up to work to find ICE trailers in City Hall parking lot. The feds had not informed them that they were coming, hadn't asked for permission to use their parking lot as a staging area. It caught city officials off guard. The police department hadn't been coordinating with any of this. And I think in that instance, the client did something pretty smart. I think it's pretty wise. They reached out to ICE officials. They told them that the trailers where they were parked was not convenient. Parking is at a premium at that city hall, and it could interfere with regular operations. And so they prefer ICE to relocate. But they do have a city park next door that was not being utilized that day, had ample parking. And if the federal officials wanted to relocate over there, the city had no objection. The client then went on social media and on the city's website and made the announcement that basically recounts the story I just told you. Now, of course, immediately the city started receiving social media traffic, emails, phone calls, folks who are supportive of ICE and their mission and their tactics, and then those that are absolutely opposed to what the agency is doing and how they're doing it. The following week, all over the country, for sure here in Texas, many students, particularly at high schools, public schools, chose to walk out of class as a form of protest to demonstrate against what ICE has been doing. And in this same town, a gentleman, a private citizen, middle-aged fellow, chose to stop his vehicle, get out of the vehicle, and what appears from all the video coverage, he assaulted a young teenage high school student who was protesting. At that point, her friends and colleagues at the school defended her, it looks like. And then eventually he left, and the next day an arrest warrant was issued, and he was taken into custody. In that case, the city police were not on site at that moment. They were in a different location. They were called to the scene. They investigated. They collected statements and collected videos, and they did what police officers are asked to do. They did an investigation, and they consulted with the district attorney and whatnot. Again, the city issued public statements showing respect for the First Amendment, showing dedication to due process and the rule of law, and exhibiting patience and respect for everybody involved. Well, I'm sitting back as a lawyer going, I don't know how I could have improved on that situation. And these situations are rapidly evolving in communities that are large and urban, even small and rural. And so with those sorts of things going on, I think, a question that comes up, how can we build trust? Because it feels to me, perhaps you can join me in this, and maybe you disagree, which is fine. It feels like democracy is being tested. This is an interesting time in our nation. And whether you work for, I see these videos of school district board meetings or county commissioners court meetings, city hall meetings. It's not just the federal government or the state government where some of these confrontations are occurring. And people are asking the questions, can we govern ourselves? Which that is the essential element of being a democracy. And we are representative democracies. We elect our leaders to go and make decisions for us for the benefit of ourselves, for our communities, for our businesses, for our homes, for our children. Are we able to do that? And as a person who studied government and history and a person who works in the field, I find that not everyone, but often there's a sizable amount of our fellow citizens that just think government is secretive. It is inefficient. It is ineffective. It's incompetent. Perhaps it's corrupt, and it's just too powerful. I can say I've got very close friends who feel that. I've got close members of my family who carry those thoughts around. And because they feel that way, they just don't trust the government. Now, are they talking about the federal government, state government, the county, the city? I think when you get into a conversation with them, they tend to trust the agencies they deal with most often. They tend to trust the family members and friends that work for government agencies. Some of them are even tradespeople who work in fields that sell goods or services to government. But they still walk around with this sense of mistrust. And part of the tension, the friction that we feel is that while they carry around these feelings, these thoughts, these impressions, they still need the government. They still want what we are able to do for them. They rely on the programs and services that we provide. And so you've got that sense of conflict, and knowing that you and I still have to show up. We choose to show up and go to work every day to serve our neighbors, to serve our communities, to preserve their quality of life, their health, safety, and welfare, and to try to do just a little bit better. And so, if we're going to try to build trust, if we're going to try to regain their confidence, I think that it's possible, and I'm optimistic about that. And that's why conversations like today just mean so much to me. And you've gone through the effort of signing up for today. So hopefully this means something to you. But I don't think it just happens. Like anything, there needs to be some effort that we expend. There needs to be a plan for how we're going to go forward. And then finally, after all the talk, the bumper stickers, the signs that we put up on the wall, we got to take action. We have to take action, and we have to live it on a day-to-day basis, and hope that incrementally over time, we can make our institutions better, and we can rebuild that trust that so many organizations are struggling to regain or to keep. But I think that's only really possible if we care. We have to care about governing well, and we have to have a common language. Can we share a vernacular? Do we have any sort of criteria or goals that most people at City Hall or the county courthouse are going to agree with? Are there some things that have broad support and buy-in by the people that we're there to serve, so that we're measuring the right things, we are attempting the right things? And that's part of what today's webinar is meant to help you with. And so when we talk about good government, good governance, I know that my clients, city managers, city council members, department heads, some of my colleagues, friends who went to law school with me, or perhaps also got their master's in public administration, or going through the certified public manager program here in Texas, they'll all tell you they favor good government. They all work toward good government. They believe in good government. Why? Well, I think if you're passionate about the topic, you want to serve your communities better. You want to strengthen the public trust. We are always trying to make things better at City Hall and continually improve. We go through training, whether it's online, self-educating, reading magazines, going to conferences, because we want to know what we're doing so that we can do it better and share that education and best practices with our colleagues and with our coworkers. We want to do better. That's why people tend to sign up for CHE webinars. They want to know that City Hall Essentials is going to help them do just a little bit better tomorrow than they were prepared to do today. But if we all buy into that, and we're all committed, and we have that passion to take care of our cities, towns, villages, and counties, do we even know what governing well means? we pay it lip service, we embrace the concept. But when I converse with my friends and my colleagues about this sort of thing, I find that we have different ideas. We have different definitions. We're sometimes coming from a different place. And so I'm wondering if there's some standards that perhaps will help us measure what we're doing. And we can look back after a period of time and just feel confident that we're doing the right thing. And being a lawyer, which is the bulk of my job, the majority of my education, I have to sometimes look at clients and say, sure, I can tell you what's legally required. I can tell you what's prohibited. I can tell you what the mandatory minimum is. But does that make it the right thing to do? And is complying with the law enough? Or can we go above and beyond and do just a little bit more to help people know that while they may disagree with what we're doing, maybe they would have chosen differently, we have a good process and good procedures to make these decisions on their behalf. We're spending their tax money, their taxpayer money. We're spending their fees that they have to give us in exchange for permits. We are regulating their conduct. And they may not like it. They may not like me. But do I show some integrity in how I go about doing this so that they understand why and how? And maybe, just maybe, they'll show a little bit of deference. That's what we might want to try for. And if that's the case, what are the common principles? What are the attributes that our cities, counties, school districts, our state agencies should be trying to embrace? Are there some practical things we can do every day? Or is this a matter of aspirational goals that get carved into granite above our buildings or in the rotundas of our city halls? Or can we do something starting today, starting tomorrow? We have a council meeting coming up. Is there something we can do better in preparation for that council meeting? You have a staff retreat or a city council workshop. What can we breathe into those gatherings that might help the team come together about some shared goals, some shared visions, and some shared principles? With that as the question, I have looked around. I don't profess to be the world's most capable researcher. I read quite a bit about government and governing, but I haven't read everything. But in looking, I haven't found a clear, simple set of standards in my beloved Texas or in these United States for what is good government. When I look around, I see some of the principles that I, Alan, would hold out as good government, and I find them scattered across various sources. And being a municipal lawyer, the kinds of things I tend to look for: federal law, we have some laws against corruption. We have state constitutions, including our very lengthy, detailed Texas Constitution, which has some restrictions that you might consider ethical. We have state statutes where the legislature has tried to adopt rules on how we should govern and what cities and local governments can and cannot do. We are blessed, particularly as municipal officials, to have so many department heads and elected leaders that are members of professional trade associations that have their own codes of conduct. Our city secretaries in the Municipal Clerks Association, our city managers with the ICMA tenants. Those professional organizations, APA rules for planners, help guide how we do things above and beyond what's legally required to help us provide better services and better products for our citizens. Most Texas cities are general law cities, but a significant number are home rule cities where the local voters have adopted a charter. And sometimes in that home rule charter, you will find rules about how meetings are to be conducted, what kind of notices are required to be given to the public. Are there restrictions on city council members' interests in contracts? And so you find some good government principles reflected in some of your home rule charters. Most cities do not have their own locally adopted code of ethics, but a few of you do, where you go above and beyond what state law has said you must do or cannot do, and you self-impose a different set of regulations on yourself in furtherance of what I would call good government. I've seen lots of policies, procedures, traditions at cities for how they conduct their meetings, how they go about purchasing. Those sorts of local decisions help provide extra transparency, maybe extra competitiveness for city contracts, and then a more professional association codes of ethics that we can look to. I know as a lawyer, I look to the American Bar Association's ethics codes for guidance. I must comply with the Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct as a term of keeping my law license. And so those sorts of things guide me as well. But are you getting a sense that these are all kind of scattered and you have to look for them, you have to be aware of them and try to be able to share them with others, because we do champion good government here in the United States and in Texas, but it's just not so easy to put your finger on something that could be the easy basis for a local conversation with your city council, with your board of adjustment or planning and zoning commission. And so I think we can work to make it a little bit easier to bring those discussions forward over some things that we generally agree to. Continuing my search, and if you haven't done this, please, maybe you enjoyed today's material so much, you're intrigued and want to go join me in the hunt. Just going onto my web browser and looking around, what can I find on the internet? I find many organizations internationally that talk about good governance. And they are purporting to provide some standards and some rules, sometimes as a condition of their involvement with the community, whether it's the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund, wanting to know that the money that they invest or loan to organizations might be spent well and for good purposes, and not the subject of graft or corruption or maybe channeled into nefarious purposes. And so that certainly makes sense. But if you just go and start, searching around for good government, good governance, you'll see many references to it. But when you look on the international level, you start to see some specific standards, and you start to pick up on some things that look familiar to us here in the United States and in Texas, and you see some reoccurring themes. And so having gone through a lot of this myself, I'll distill some of it down for you today as an audience. We've all heard of the United Nations. We understand about the UN Security Council, our role as a member of the United Nations and hosting the organization's office in New York City. When you look at the UN, they've defined good governance through 8 characteristics. And I think if you look at these, some of them will be kind of obvious to you. You'll go, well, duh. Yes, these are the kinds of things government should do, whether it is a small village in Texas or perhaps it's a large corporation across the seas. According to the UN, government should be participatory. Well, for us, if you're a democratic institution like ours, that's required, that the people involved have a chance to participate in their own governing. Being consensus oriented, where you're trying to build a broad level of support and buy-in to what's going on versus dictating the way it must be from the top down. Of course, a good government must be accountable. And what does that mean? Accountable to whom? And how are rules, regulations, and standards enforced? Transparency, transparency, transparency. I've seen so many mayors in particular, but other city council members run for office the last few years with transparency being at the very top of their election platform. Sometimes you see them struggle with that once they get elected and see, what does that really mean to be transparent to the world? Good government should be responsive, effective, and efficient, especially if you're spending public resources, tax money, for example. Equitable and inclusive, good principles to embrace. And here's one of my favorites, following the rule of law. Can we have a rule for how rules get adopted, how rules are applied, how rules are enforced, and rather than ignoring the law or openly violating the law, we're going to agree to follow the law. So I think this is a pretty decent list. I imagine most of you have no trouble with these, most of these. Maybe you want to add a few. Maybe you don't feel so strongly about one or two. And that's okay. We're not here today to try to force upon you one standard that fits all. We're offering ideas and engaging in a conversation with you that hopefully you can turn around and feel empowered after this morning to have those own conversations yourself with your neighbors, with the folks at the volunteer fire department, with your friend on the school board, and with those that you serve with in your organization. But this is how the UN defined it. I think it's fairly useful. And I think if you were looking for a list to apply to your organization, your department, your agency, you could probably borrow some of this from the United Nations, and I would feel comfortable with you doing so. For me, here's the list that really started this whole exploration. And I'll tell you, I came across it somewhat by accident. Yes, as a municipal lawyer, a city attorney, special counsel to some cities, I've seen some of the tension and the friction at City Hall where people are concerned about books on library shelves. They're concerned about we don't have a city workforce that demographically reflects the nature of our community. There are underrepresented members of our population in our employment ranks. And then conversely, there are folks that are concerned about DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and the fact that perhaps the pendulum's swinging another direction. And so we have heated conversations about those sorts of things, tension over open records and open meetings. That's part of my day-to-day practice. But what got me focused on this material is I am part of an organization called the International Municipal Lawyers Association, IMLA. Our law firm is very involved in IMLA, and hopefully your city attorney or your advisor for your agency is active in IMLA. It represents local government attorneys, a great source of education and networking. And at one point, they were having a legal conference, a very small seminar overseas in Italy. And I'm very proud to have been asked to speak to this group on ethics. And while I'm very comfortable speaking on ethics to Texas lawyers or lawyers here in the United States and Canada, I got to admit, I was just a wee bit nervous about what I was going to say and how I was going to make it relevant to our colleagues from Italy. And then I learned that we had a few lawyers, municipal lawyers, joining us from Germany and from Switzerland. And so as this group got more diverse, I got more apprehensive about what am I going to say? How am I going to say it? How am I going to make this connection to these colleagues overseas? And in the course of my research, trying to understand how people in Europe deal with ethics in local government and open records, open meetings, those sorts of things that I'm familiar with here, but absolutely ignorant about over there, I came across the 12 principles of good governance. And for me, it was an epiphany. It was one of those moments where after talking about some of these topics so often for so long, I was so excited to come across something new. And I was just frankly impressed that the Council of Europe had put these 12 things together, had educational programs, a wonderful online website resource, including a digital handbook on these points. And then they actually present an award to local government entities across Europe. If you comply with these 12 principles, you embrace them, and you use them for your daily governance, if you can establish that, you get a 12-sided trophy. And at this point, someone's entering into the comments for Sheila, what do you call a 12-sided 12-sided shape? I think I got a C back in geometry, so I have no idea what you call it. But the photos are online. This beautiful crystal trophy, 12 sides, each representing one of the 12 principles adopted by the Council of Europe. Over 300 European cities have applied for and gotten this recognition, including 30 in Italy, which blew my mind because I didn't even know there were 30 cities in Italy. That's how ignorant of a world traveler I am. And when I saw that Italian cities I'd never heard of had embraced these 12 traits, used them every day to govern, reached out for and received recognition, it lit my brain and it warmed my heart. And so I had to learn more about this. And because I just kept learning, I finally talked to Sheila about maybe we can help teach some other people about this. Maybe they don't know. And when you look at this, you look at participation, representation, and elections. We love our elections in the United States. We love them in Texas. We work hard to have dependable, reliable elections people can trust. We work so closely with the municipal clerks, the city secretaries, to help them and county elections administrators run elections. And in my career, I've never dealt with one single problematic election. Perhaps some of you have, I have not. And so we get it right most of the time, and people seem to trust what goes on in our city elections, and I'm very proud of that. Being responsive, efficient, and effective. God, that kind of sounds like the United Nations just a little bit. Open and transparent. Well, that makes a lot of sense. In a democracy, citizens must have access to the decision-making process, and they must have access to the data that the government has in order for their participation to be meaningful at all. That is fundamental. That is the basis of the Open Meetings and Open Records Acts here in Texas, which date back to the 1970s. So that's been the rule of law for us for a long time. But can you imagine some of this probably was pretty novel to certain parts of Europe that had no long history of local control and local self-government, versus here in Texas, we have a proud history of local control and self-government. Before Texas was a nation, a state, it was a collection of autonomous cities and communities across the state that took care of their own business, raised their own revenue, enforced their own regulations. Most of them have very little in common, but all together make up this wonderful state. Well, I don't think Europe quite has the history we have. So this is probably important stuff for them to adopt. The rule of law, yes, that just is fundamental. Ethics, some people think it's negotiable, but you can imagine the corruption in some of these European communities that used to be under the thumb of authoritarian dictators, and now all of a sudden they were calling the shots themselves. Competence and capacity, innovation and openness to change. A lot of us struggle with that one. Sustainability, long run orientation. How interesting is that? The planners out there certainly like that. I bet the budget finance managers like that too. And they like sound financial management, which we here in Texas, no deficit budgeting. We have to have a balanced budget, and it's very difficult to go into debt in Texas, which requires the rule of law to come in and help with that. Human rights, cultural diversity, and social cohesion. Certainly laudable goals, things that we can applaud, and accountability. Again, sort of like the United Nations, you get this sense that some of these things are commonly thought of and maybe frequently spoken about in some places. And so I found this inspiring. And yes, when I gave my ethics talk in Italy, I built it around some of these prongs. And I was happy to see my European brothers and sisters with their headphones on, getting their translation, because I do not speak Italian. They were nodding at all the right points. They were familiar with this material and they understood it. And that was something that we had in common and we were able to talk about. So I was tickled to find this information, and I came home and put it to bed and never thought about it again. What kind of boring story is that? That's a going nowhere story. Of course, I came back more inspired than ever and wanted to start looking, because I know, hey, we invented democracy in the United States, right? Right? No, no, no. We did not invent democracy. We were not the first ones to try it, speak about it, write about it. But we've perfected it, right? We perfected democracy. Have we? Can we honestly say that? I don't know. But I know that other people smarter than me have thought about and written about this topic. And so we've got to have some standards here in the United States or in Texas that tells us clearly, what does good government mean to us? I appreciate the Europeans. I appreciate the World Bank and the United Nations and what they've contributed to a stable globe. I'm an American. I'm a native born Texan. What guides us? That was the nature of my search. And if you look at the screen, you will see that we have lots of awards in Texas and in the United States that absolutely touch upon some of the themes that I've mentioned. We have transparency awards. We have good government awards. We have innovation awards. We have technology awards. We have some awards that include cohesiveness, inclusion, diversity, absolutely, best practices, cooperation. There's lots of opportunities, and I'm very proud that our law firm represents several cities that have several plaques on the wall or a really beautiful trophy case where they routinely are winning some of these awards. And when they do get these sort of accolades, that recognition should help city officials stand up just a little bit taller and help the citizens be a little bit more comfortable that what's going on over at City Hall is okay. It's being done well by people who know what they're doing. They're committed to doing it right. And while a particular issue may be upsetting, overall, our communities are sound and they're safe. And so I appreciate these awards. I've nominated clients for awards. I've been happy to be there when some clients have received awards. And if our law firm played a tiny little role in the project that got recognized by one of these groups, well, that's just something wonderful for me because we take pride in our clients' accomplishments. And I'm sure you're the same way with your team. But this doesn't really answer the question that I'm looking for. What is the unified central set of standards, best practices, recommendations that we can all embrace all the time and try really hard to do a better job so that while there may be mayhem outside our city, within our city limits, people are comfortable and confident knowing that we're taking care of business as we should. I was happy to come across this. It's an article of sorts published by Cornell University. I give you the URL on the screen if you want to look it up. This was just put out there in November, which is after I'd already agreed with Sheila I would do this webinar. But I'm constantly looking to see what's out there on this topic of good government. And if you love this topic, please do your own research and see what you find. I think it's fascinating. But the article talks about recent polls, usually by Gallup or Pew. One of these polls in 2025 showed deep distrust and clear demands for change among American citizens toward their government. You can go read this article yourself. I think it's interesting. Ultimately, they use this to point people toward the fact that Cornell's got an excellent Master of Public Administration program. And I got my MPA at Texas Tech, but I respect what Cornell and others have done. There's lots of great universities trying to teach us how to govern better and serve our public better. But some of the things that these polls reveal that this Cornell article pulled together is people are concerned about transparency and honesty, not just being self-serving or keeping things to ourselves. They want their government to be competent, able to actually do the things we are attempting or needing to do. And are we at all showing our citizens that we're getting results? What are they getting for all the effort? What are they getting for the taxpayers, the funding that they give us, or the rates or fees that are getting paid? Is government clear and relatable? Are we communicating with people in a way that they can understand what's going on? I think that many of the cities that I worked with over the years have been pretty good about telling the citizens what we're doing. And maybe we tell them how we're going to go about doing it. I think we fall short on the why. I don't think we're always open and showing them or telling them why we're undertaking this construction project or we're not going to improve this park over here, or why are we having to deal with something with the water and wastewater infrastructure? And then asking for feedback, and then actually doing something with the input that we receive. The polls all show that people want government that's close to the community, which is the sweet spot for us and for City Hall Essentials and our law firm and the communities that are on today's webinar. Is that local experience is something that gives us a strength. I think the polls, Gallup and Pew, are going to show that when it comes to trusting government, people report that they trust local government much more than state or federal. It's because of who we are, how we do things, the kind of day-to-day services that we're providing, perhaps. I think it's also because we're more accessible. They know us. They bump into us at the grocery store. They see us at the Little League game or the Girl Scout meeting, and they trust people they know. That's a benefit. That's a strength. That's one reason why I've dedicated my career to serving local government, not state or federal. But I think we still have some distance that we need to overcome and shorten that gap between the governed and those who are doing the governing. And I think the research is going to support that. This one I found interesting: nonpartisan in service, built on professionalism, public duty, and not political advantage. Well, that's usually talking about the staff, the civil service, the employees. And if you happen to have a city manager form of government, your community has elected to do that through your charter or a separate election, then they have embraced a system of governing where the city manager and perhaps the city attorney, maybe the judge or police chief, maybe they are directly accountable to the city council, and the city council is accountable to the citizens. But the staff, day to day, is responsible to the city manager. They've created this buffer to help protect city employees from the whims of politics. Right now in Texas, municipal elections are not partisan. You do not have to declare a party affiliation in order to run for office. There have been several bills filed over the recent years that would change that, so that cities would be more like counties. There are cities in other states that have partisan elections. We do not have those right now in Texas. And frankly, I support our current system. I ascribe to what TML, the Texas Municipal League, is fond of saying. They have not found a Republican or Democrat way to pave a pothole. And while I know people walk into City Hall and they probably have their party views, their party platforms on their mind, it doesn't materialize as often as it does in other types of government. So maybe you favor going to partisan elections. I respect your point of view. I just disagree with that. But when you look at the research and what people are telling the pollsters and how the polls are being interpreted by fine universities such as Cornell, you see people want their day-to-day services, regulations, programs provided in a nonpartisan way. And so I appreciate Cornell for giving us information, just a little bit more that we're able to utilize when deciding what is good government? What do the people want from us? How can we be responsive and give it to them? Do we stop here? Maybe we end this early. I don't know. I've given you some information from overseas or global. Talked about some of the problems, some of the challenges. I think we have some insight. If you need to break away and go back to the rest of your workday, I certainly would understand that. But I encourage you to stick around. We have a little bit more to go, because I feel like I would not have done my job just asking the questions and pointing out some of the difficulties we face without offering you maybe some local solutions. Our law firm serves Texas. You heard Sheila say early on, City Hall Essentials focuses on Texas. We care about the other states, friends, colleagues, and families in the other states. What we're trying to do today is provide some direction. Where should we be headed? What can we start doing now that makes sense to us in Texas? Do we have a set of standards, rules, something we can aspire to that will help us feel a little bit better about our jobs as public servants, and also make the citizens who pay the taxes, who are subject to the zoning regulations, who pray that police, fire, and EMS show up on the worst day of their lives. And those are people that they can trust and believe in, even when the public happens to be scared or overwhelmed. What can we do? Well, having felt so inspired by what has been done elsewhere, several colleagues, friends, clients of mine, we wanted to put something forward for you to think about. Maybe it's meaningful to you. Maybe it'll help you. Maybe it's boring. Maybe you look at it and just go, well, duh, Alan, this is so obvious. We need to waste time or money talking about it. But I feel strongly that sometimes leadership is having to say things that shouldn't have to be said. But we need to say them anyway, because we need to have these conversations. We need to refocus on some of the fundamentals that matter most. And once we get those right, lots of other good things are going to sprout from there and grow. And that's why we're going to offer you this. We've called them the 10 Texas traits of good government. And some of these will look familiar. Nothing original here. I promise you, I did not invent these. They're fairly commonly held, deeply held in many of your hearts and souls already. But they've been fashioned into a list, and we have supplemented the list with comments that help explain these, help bring them to life, and give you guidance you can use on a daily basis. Whether you're a very large metropolitan city or a tiny, tiny rural town or a sparsely populated county, you can use these. You can work on these. And maybe you already have. Maybe you've got it down and you're doing things perfectly. And if so, bravo, you deserve applause and recognition. But where I've been speaking about these lately, the last 6 months or so, is in communities where they're struggling just a little bit. Maybe there's a problem at City Hall as a whole. Maybe there's some citizens that are very critical of what's going on in the organization. Maybe there's a split on your city council and your city hall is a house divided. Maybe you just got one bad actor who is a pain and causing grief for everyone. Well, when I've been asked to discuss this information and share these traits, you start to find common ground and you start to feel a consensus build, a majority nodding, going, yes, this is what we need. We should be doing this. We should have been doing it all along. We've been trying. We can get our game up just a little bit. And we've chosen words that we think resonate here in Texas. And when I think about the best run organizations that I've had the honor of working with, experiencing, they do these things. And so we have the 10 Texas traits of good government. Why 10? It's a personal thing for me, if only because I'm a child of the 80s. And in the 1980s, everyone knew about David Letterman and you knew about his top 10 lists. And all of a sudden, everywhere you went, somebody had a top 10. So perhaps people can't really digest or manage more than 10 things. Europe's got the 12 principles. We've got the 10 traits. 10 Texas traits. Come on, y'all. That's alliteration. Alliteration, it just sort of rolls right off the tongue, right? 10 Texas traits. We think these are the things that matter the most. They're not the only things that matter. And as you look at this list and you contemplate how you govern, the choices you make, maybe 10's not enough. Maybe your city is going to adopt these 10 plus an extra 5. Bravo, hoorah. I support you, absolutely. I think that's great. Maybe you look at these 10 and you're thinking, we can do without 1 or 2. I question that, and I would love to learn more about which ones you're rejecting. But in the end, I trust local governments in Texas to govern locally. And yes, there's some federal and state laws that hem us in and require us to do a few things. I support those. That's where I make my living. But you also get to adopt your own local rules, regulations, policies, procedures. strategic plans, goals. How do these 10 things fit into your government? How do these 10 things figure into your life? What are you doing on a regular basis that you think is falling short? Um, I look at these and I go through a bit of self-reflection. I interned for a few cities when I was in school. Uh, First municipal job as a lawyer was the Texas Municipal League. I think about times when I was really good at helping clients do the bare minimum, and I should have been encouraging them to maybe go above and beyond. I do that now, but I had to come to it over time with experience and maybe just a little bit of wisdom that comes with my hair going from brown to gray. How are you experiencing these 10 things? How do they affect what you're doing at your very next city council meeting or your very next parks and recreation meeting? Maybe you, as a city manager, have a staff meeting with your department heads and you need to talk about these things. That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping this is the beginning of many conversations, not, oops, it's going to be 12 noon and this is over and you file it away and forget about it. And so here are the 10 Texas traits of good government. I'm going to spend what's left of our time trying to explain to you what they're about. And I've got a long list of friends and colleagues that contributed to the comments. When I shopped this list around, I was first of all daring someone to tell me that I'm too late, that such a list already exists in Texas. It's been embraced, it's been widely publicized, and many cities have been following it for years. Doy, Alan, here's the URL. Learn how to Google. That hasn't happened. I reached out to city manager friends of mine who are very active in the Texas City Management Association and its counterpart, ICMA. I'm blessed to be very active in the public administration program at my alma mater, Texas Tech. Go Tech. But also at Texas State University and their certified public manager program. So I reach out to professors, people smarter than me who got PhD after their name at multiple universities. The George Bush School at Texas A&M. What do you say, Sheila? Whoopee! Yeah, there you go, Texas A&M, a wonderful university and a very prestigious public administration school. Asking them, what am I missing from this list? Where does this list exist in another form that I can just copy, paste, send to my clients, and move on with my law practice? And instead, I wasn't told that this was a bad list. No one said I was wrong. Nobody pointed out a list that pre-existed that we could just go ahead and start referring to and rely upon that. Instead, they just enthusiastically were helping me explain these points. How should we be implementing them? How do we make them operational on a regular basis? What do most cities do well? And what do a lot of cities do wrong? And can we change that paradigm from what we've accepted as being traditional and okay, as we really need to do a little bit better? And all these friends, these city managers, these public administration professors really took this list and helped me take it beyond where I started with it. And so I'm really presenting to you the results of kind of a crowdsourced group project that we started, obviously based on what we found in Europe and the United Nations and other places that deal with this issue globally. And we really tried to focus on Texas, our Texas. And I imagine once you become familiar with this material, you could probably help us take it to the next level. And I welcome that. I welcome other contributions, comments, and absolutely criticism. If you think this whole thing just misses the target, I might not agree with you, but I would love to know your point of view. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. You can reach me through our firm's website if you don't have my contact info. The conversation is what I wanted to get started. So let's dig a little deeper, shall we? The very first one, respect. Now, I will disclaim the notion that these 10 Texas traits are listed in a particular hierarchical order. They're not. There is no rhyme or reason to how they appear, except for we're going to start with respect, because I think all these communications and service provision should start with respect. And then we're going to end with accountability. But otherwise, in between, no, it was somewhat random, and I enjoyed doing that. I didn't want to be the one to rank these. If you want to rank them, please feel free. I'd love to know how you would reorder that list. I've had some friends and colleagues tell me that they think I should have prioritized one or the other. I think that's a fascinating conversation to have. You get some insight. But we're going to start with respect. It should be a given. I shouldn't have to talk about it at all. But if you've been hanging around city halls, you know that not everyone shares this value. I see city council members at the dais during meetings not being respectful to one another. I've seen city managers be rude to citizens, people who gave up their evening to come to City Hall to sit and wait in a crowded, hot council chamber to get their 3 minutes to speak just to have the city manager be disrespectful and rude. Is that what governing is about? Does that inspire trust or faith? I don't think so. I've had clients be rude to me, and I have no doubt that as lawyers, we sometimes talk down to people. And there's been times in my experience where a citizen comes to the podium and they're making all sorts of accusations. And so to come to the defense of the city secretary, I'll bring the hammer down on that citizen. I immediately felt terrible. Turns out my client, the city council, was not impressed. Citizens thought I was a bully. And the city secretary, municipal clerks are tough. She didn't need my protection. And that's when I realized, my gosh, I must always be respectful when dealing with others in the public realm and elsewhere. Not because that particular citizen at the podium deserves it, but because my public position demands it. And once I understood where I had made a mistake, it's been so simple ever since. And so trying to convince clients, whether you're in the public works department, you're a police officer, or you're the mayor, to treat people with courtesy and fairness and professionalism, it's been part of the ongoing conversation whenever I get a chance. We've got to do what we can to either maintain or restore civility in our council chambers, in our one-on-one meetings, in helping people at the window when they come to pay their utility bills or find out when their court date is for municipal court. We can do that. We have to respect people's rights. They're given rights under the Texas Constitution, the United States Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. Some say that we have inherent rights that come from our maker that we are supposed to respect even when we are in the government. Because we all work for democracies, we've got to not just respect dissent. I'm suggesting we need to welcome it. We need to facilitate it. We need to hear from people who disagree with us. And if they're jerks, that's unfortunate. I don't know how to teach adults to be nice and kind, but I know that we can facilitate forums where we set the tone and we make sure our staffs and our volunteers on boards and commissions will also join us in creating that safe space to disagree with each other and criticize each other. We have people from different backgrounds, different attributes. Perhaps they have a different accent. What's the song? You're not from Texas, but Texas wants you anyway. I think that's a fantastic tune, and it's always been my understanding of how Texas came to be. And some of the biggest tension I see is not about racial, ethnic, gender demographics. It's my small towns that are used to doing things their way, and all of a sudden they've got citizens that moved in from big cities or California or somewhere else, and they need to be brought into the fold and welcomed. But sometimes those newcomers have a different way of doing things and different services or programs they want. Well, guess what? In a local democracy, we get to hear from them too. We reach out to the public, stakeholders, and engage them to reach out and ask them what they think about something we're trying to do is itself a form of respect. And the last one is really kind of a no-brainer, but I said it. Gosh, I had a city interviewing our firm to be city attorney just the other day. And while speaking with the city council, I brought this up to remember everyone at City Hall is a human. And you know what? Lawyers are humans too. We have not been replaced by law bots yet. Can we be respectful toward each other in knowing there's lots about each other that we just don't know? We don't know if someone was in a car wreck earlier that day. Do they have a sick relative who passed away? Is their dog ill? Did they just have pipes burst and flood their home? We don't know what's going on in people's lives, but we know they're humans. We know they're experiencing things. And so, can we be respectful even when we're in a rough situation where we disagree? I think we can. And I think if we show that kind of respect, the rest that follows just gets easier. So where do we start? We start with respect. Righty. Number two, responsive. This is the number two thing on our list of 10 Texas traits. Reasonable public expectations are met in a timely manner. Can we just deliver? Hopefully, you're not just in this for a job, or maybe you view public service as a stepping stone. You're in it to serve. Well, if you have a servant's heart, then you want to be able to advance the ball. You want to move it across the goal line. And so, if we're here to serve, we are receptive to what the public wants and needs, and we're trying to give them programs that meet their preferences. It doesn't mean the public's always right. The customer is not always right. Sometimes we have to draw the line, legal limits, budgetary limits, timing, whatever, limited resources. But we need to try to help them in the way that they want to be helped, because democracy is about self-governance. And while it's a representative democracy, we need to stay in tune with what they need, what they want, what they've asked for. Have they participated in surveys? I hear communities where voters will go through and approve bonds at bond elections because they want that new road, they want that public park. Years later, the contracts have not been signed, the money hasn't been spent. Voters are wondering, what are you waiting on? And the healthy cities regularly communicate with their citizens about the status of those capital improvement projects, those bond projects, and where they are. And if there's a delay, why is there a delay, and what are we doing to address it? Legally, when citizens ask you questions, you normally don't have an obligation to respond, not under the law. Do you have a complaint policy, a grievance procedure? Well, then maybe you should follow that. I suggest you do it. But normally there's no law, a statute, a court case compelling you to answer questions. That's the legal answer. But isn't it the right thing to do? Even to a citizen who perhaps has been trolling your community and is a little bit prickly and sometimes painful to deal with, they're still a citizen. And while you can figure out what your local practice is to cope with some that are a little more difficult, we should be responsive on a regular basis. And our programs and our services should be customer service oriented. Just like our partners in the corporate sector dealing with their customers, we have customers. Even when it's somebody who got a speeding ticket, that's our customer. Someone who receives our utilities, we are zoning their neighborhood and restricting what they can do in their house. They are our customers. And if we embrace that customer service mindset, it can affect our forms, our websites, our portals, our face-to-face interactions. I'll tell you, I've got a client here in Central Texas. I was walking into City Hall the other day for some meetings, and I swore a woman almost knocked me over running out of the front door of City Hall. Well, I don't see that every day. She's waving an envelope. Sir, sir, sir. Chasing a man out into the parking lot. What in the world? I've got to stand and figure out what's going on. This is interesting. She caught the gentleman in the parking lot, handed over the envelope, and walked back. I held the door open for her. I said, "Hey, that looks pretty important. What was going on?" Turns out that was a municipal court clerk, and somebody had come in to pay their fine and left their credit card at the window. She didn't just stick it in a drawer. She grabbed an envelope, went all the way down the hall, out the door on the opposite side, ran through the lobby, down the sidewalk, into the parking lot, chasing that gentleman to give him back his credit card. Never have I seen that in my life, not in a store, certainly not in a government agency. I immediately walked upstairs and told the city manager all about it. He immediately sent her an email. He knew exactly who I was talking about. And then I thanked him and congratulated him for the spirit of customer service in that city hall. I bet it permeates the entire organization. And then I challenged him to figure out, why did she do what she did? How did she know to do that? And how do you reward her and get others to follow her example? We need more of that. I wish I could have thought of such a suggestion. It never would have occurred to me. That municipal court clerk knew what to do, and she did it in the moment. Bravo. That's another form of responsiveness, is customer service. Number 3 is effective. We should be gauging our productivity to make sure we're actually achieving our goals. Our organization set lots of goals. We have goal setting strategy sessions, strategic plans, comprehensive plans. Just the process of going through the annual budget every summer is itself a planning exercise. How often do we look back and see what we've done? How often do we report to the public our progress, or just be honest about our lack of progress? You have to have priorities. If everything's a priority, nothing is a priority. It's a truth. And yeah, maybe legally I can set some priorities for my clients, and they'll typically buy in on that. City managers, city administrators set priorities for their staff, maybe during the course of doing annual employment evaluations. But I think the priority setters in chief are going to be the mayor and the city council. They're the ones elected to have the vision for what the community is going to look like 5, 10, 50 years in the future. And they give the priorities to staff, and then our job is to go and implement it. So how do we know if we're managing public resources well, whether it's time, facilities, money, people, if we're not evaluating as we go? And one thing my city manager friends wanted to make sure is that we're not just measuring things to measure things. That's bureaucracy at its worst. We're not creating metrics just to have something to measure. We've got to be measuring things that are meaningful to the people that elected our city councils, who pay their bills, who make this organization possible, whether it's more hike and bike trails, or it is water that's more tasty to drink, or what? A better code enforcement and dealing with dilapidated substandard buildings, and let's clean up this town. Well, maybe you've got surveys, maybe you've got portals on your websites, maybe you do town hall meetings to get your goals from the citizens, from the development community, from your small businesses. Oh, you're a Main Street town. You know what matters the most to your Main Street businesses. Great. Plans are fantastic. Budgets are necessary. Are we actually getting things done? What did we fail to do? Do we abandon it because it wasn't realistic? Do we schedule to do it next year? What happens to those goals, dreams, visions that are left on the wayside? We should confront that, and we should be comfortable enough and confident enough to confront it publicly. And let's be honest with our citizens about, maybe we're shifting goals. Maybe we thought the rodeo grounds being renovated was a priority, but we've done a survey and we've checked into things, and indoor recreation has a greater demand. There are lots of places for people to do their FFA and 4-H work, maybe, but not enough places for people to have indoor recreation. All right, every town's a little different priorities, different challenges, different opportunities. But are we using any sort of metrics or evaluation to gauge how we're doing, report on it, and then decide what adjustments? We've surveyed the landscape and decided we need to go a different direction. Okay, do it. Don't be stuck. Don't be so. Grit is not being devoted and dedicated to something you hate that's dangerous or disastrous. Um, so sometimes you have to set that aside and go a different direction, but evaluating it and then talking with your public about it and the regulated community is something that will help regain trust and increase people's faith in their government institutions. Number 4 is transparent. This is huge. I've mentioned it several times. And for this one, it feels personal to me. But in a democracy, public participation in their democratic process absolutely necessitates they have access to the decision-making process and to the data that the government has and is relying upon. So they need to be able to see our decisions being made, which in Texas, we've got the Texas Open Meetings Act, which says they get a right to know about the meetings in advance, come to the meetings, watch, listen, record the meetings, and actually participate in the meetings. That's fantastic. It may seem like a pain, a distraction, it slows us down. Perhaps all of that's true given your particular circumstances. But it's vital to having a democracy, which is what we've got. And to make them flourish, we have to not just allow the public to participate, we need to facilitate it. We need to think about it in advance. We need to know what's the proper room, the proper seating arrangement. Do we have the audio visual taken care of? Do we need to schedule a break every now and then? Is 6 o'clock the best time for this? Or should we have it on a Saturday at 12 noon? Those sorts of things go into engaging your citizenry in a meaningful way. And if they can't show up to your meeting, they've got little kids caring for elderly parents, maybe they're sick, their jobs are demanding. Are we creating alternate processes or procedures for them to find out what's going on and contribute some sort of input or feedback into what's going on? And so that is the challenge. And the reason I say I feel personal about this, I've been a licensed lawyer for 29 years, representing cities the entire time. And I'm really good about telling clients the minimum number of public hearings required under the law, what the notices and requirements are for a public meeting, ways to keep data away from the public under the Public Information Act. I'm patting myself on the back. I'm rather skilled with those things. But depending on the circumstances, is that really the right thing to do? I've been proud of clients, some of mine here in the hill country of Texas, where 20 years ago, they made the decision, yeah, when you rezone property in Texas, the statute requires you give notice to the property owners in advance if they've got property within 200 feet of the zoning change. Well, my client decided through their local ordinance to give notice to those within 300 feet. They didn't have to. They chose to be more transparent than they had to be. They've got a planning and zoning commission in that town. Very common to have one, 5 members, 7 members, 9 members. State law doesn't tell you what the eligibility is to serve on a planning and zoning commission in Texas. But this town I'm referring to in the hill country chose to create 2 positions on the Planning and Zoning Commission just for residents of the ETJ, the extraterritorial jurisdiction. So they created a 7-member Planning and Zoning Commission, setting aside 2 seats for ETJ dwellers. Why? Because what happens at City Hall affects the ETJ, but you don't get to vote on a city council or mayor if you're in the ETJ. So this city was doing that in a way to further their version of representative democracy. As a lawyer, I was asked, can we do that? Yes, you can. As an American citizen, my response was, bravo. Kudos to you for going above and beyond, because you didn't have to, but you knew what the right thing to do was in your circumstance. Just like many of you have put signs in the front yards of properties that are subject to getting rezoned. Statute doesn't require a sign at the curb, but many of you have been doing it for years. Well, now the legislature has required it for large cities, That's a new law effective recently. But most of you have been doing that for a long time, putting notices on your website that you didn't have to. That is fantastic. Finding ways to engage members of your public. I still have city councils, individual members will say, well, if they care about it, they'll show up at our meetings, but no one showed up, so we get to do what we want. I would say that's sort of an old school way of thinking, and I'm not sure it was ever right. To require them to give up their evening and come sit through all these different issues. I got clients who still don't broadcast their meetings on the internet. They don't even use social media to broadcast their meetings for free. I have to challenge them. Why? Oh, that's the way we've always done it. Okay, I respect tradition and customs, I do, but maybe we need to do something new and different because we want folks to know what we're doing. We want to be open. They're going to trust us more if the sunshine is glaring off our foreheads because we are out in the open, letting them know why we're doing it, what we're doing, and how we're doing it. And we're opening ourselves up to criticism, I get it, but you have to be a little bit tough-skinned to be in public service. It comes with the territory. And oh, by the way, they've got a right to. And if you don't facilitate a way for them to have their comments, they're going to find a way, and it might be quite negative. I am fond of saying that we owe it to feed the beast a steady diet of the truth, or it will consume anything. And for those of you out there that steadily provide your citizens, the media, businesses, with a steady stream of facts, bravo. Be a reliable source for information so that those who don't know the truth, they speculate and throw their opinions all over the internet, maybe they just won't be as credible as you are. I know not every city on today's webinar has a big enough budget to hire professional staff to handle their communications in a professional manner. Do what you can with the resources you have. But public communications is a worthwhile thing to do in order to increase public trust, participation, and support of what you are doing. One of my favorite public servants, a longtime city manager in Texas, finally retired to become a professor at the Texas A&M's Bush School, and now he's a consultant. He added this prong: we have to share factual data with the public free of advocacy. I think his words were spin, no spin, a spin-free zone. Let's not just take the facts and word it in a way that makes us look good and pacifies the public. Let's just give them the raw information, let them decide for themselves. And if they criticize us, perhaps we deserve it. Now, yes, maybe you've got an opinion, maybe you want to put your slant to things, but let's not let slanted information be the only information that we're putting out there. Sometimes they deserve to have the raw information to process themselves and come up with their own conclusions. And then, of course, technology. We have all these tools. People can carry around their government in their pocket or in their purse. A lot of you have your own apps. You have portals, services, platforms that you have paid for that help your citizens find out where agendas are, public information requests online, apply for their permit to build their carport, those sorts of things. We can use technology to engage with our citizens and to hear from them, respond to them, and share information. Yes, it creates more work. I think it's worthwhile. I think you'll find it worthwhile, and it's expected. And by the way, the younger generations that are maturing and becoming voters, they absolutely expect to be able to interact with you entirely on their phones. And if you don't, that's okay. Ignore them at your own peril. Let's see who they elect to put into office next. So what, Alan's encouraging you to be more transparent solely for your own self-preservation? Not solely, but find your motivation where you will. If you need to persuade members of your city council to invest in some of this technology, or an employee or a part-time consultant to help you with your messaging, that might be a good use of your resources, because the youngers are looking for that. They're going to expect it. And I think they're going to get it one way or the other. Let's go ahead and accept them for who they are, citizens, the way they are, and try to modify some of the things we do versus being forced to do it down the road. So being transparent, absolutely vital to good governance. Number 5, competent. It's a huge one for me. And I think it's probably an important one for you. Why would you register and give of your time to come to a City Hall Essentials webinar if you didn't value competence? We all have an interest in our officials being skilled, educated, and dedicated to continuous improvement. I don't think you have to be an expert in budgets, HR, open meetings, open records, or ethics to run for city council. But I do think you should get caught up as fast as you can. If you walked into your public position confident that you know everything you need to know, I'm just a wee bit concerned. The reason that my law firm exists is because municipal law has gotten so complicated and so vast. The breadth of it is overwhelming for most lawyers. It's proving increasingly difficult for a lawyer that is a divorce lawyer, family lawyer, wills and estates, oil and gas, to also be well versed in municipal law. So you have firms like mine, and there's several good, strong municipal law firms across the state. And some of you have in-house law firms, city attorneys' offices that serve you very well. It's become a specialty of sorts. Well, same thing with city management. You may have somebody who did a great job of running an army base in the military or were very successful as a manager in the corporate sector. It's a tough transition going into government work. Maybe they've got good transferable skills. I applaud them for that. But they need to learn what they're doing. They need to learn the nuance, not just of municipal government, Texas municipal government. We have our own legal requirements. We have best practices. There are ways things that are done that tend to yield better results. And so I hope we're all investing time, effort, whether it's in webinars, books, magazines, those sorts of things. One of my favorite, here's a plug for our friends at Texas Municipal League, the Texas Town and City Magazine. Here on my desk is the issue from January. Voila, right here, an article about the 10 Texas traits of good government and how it was adopted and brought to life in the town of Ransom Canyon out in Lubbock County. Hopefully your city is members of the Texas Municipal League. You get that magazine, you can get it online. I tend to read it cover to cover every month. I don't learn much about the law in there. I've got other resources for that. I learn about Texas, Texas cities, and I draw inspiration from other communities that are doing great things. There's an article in the January issue on our friends in New Braunfels and their internal leadership development, leadership training program. I reached out and introduced myself to the employee who's running that program, congratulated them on the program, thanked them for sharing the article. It gave me some good ideas for my own business. There's lots of sources for material to learn, whether you work in Parks and Rec, Public Works, you're a municipal court judge. We should all be investing in our education and our training because the world's moving quickly, and advances in law, technology, economics, finance, we all have to keep up. And so hopefully that's something, if you've got a large budget, you invest in big conferences. If you've got a small budget, well, then you look for very cost efficient things that will help your team stay on the cutting edge and keep their eye on the ball. An important one these days that we don't talk about enough, so I'm happy to bring it up, and it's listed under trait number 5 of the 10 traits, is providing for rest, recuperation, and replenishment. To be competent, we've got to have energy. We've got to have some brain power. We've got to have some bandwidth. And a big concern in municipal government today, I think it's nationwide, is burnout. You can't go to a city manager conference or pick up a city manager periodical and not find someone writing or speaking about burnout. I know a very good book that's coming out this May from a consultant and trainer here in Texas And it's all about burnout and some prescriptions to help you avoid it. Um, Knowing that people are exiting the profession prematurely because of burnout is causing some younger professionals from entering into the profession. They see it, they know it, they've experienced it. So I think we all have a duty to make sure our city councils aren't burnt out from too many special meetings or meetings that go from 6 p.m. to 1 o'clock in the morning. Gosh, I don't know how that's sustainable. And then our staffs. Are they burning the midnight oil? They're working 24/7. Are you getting the best from them when they don't take a break? I heard a podcast just the other day about a city manager I know who got to take a leave of absence, a sabbatical, not because anything was wrong, but because the city council wanted to make sure things keep going right. And some city managers are building it into their contracts these days that every few years they're entitled to a month off. And boy, when they say a month off, they mean they're leaving their phone in the suitcase or the glove box and they're not touching it. I don't know what the right thing is for your staff, your situation, but I think part of being competent is training and education and experience. And part of it is stepping away for a moment, relaxing, catching a breath, and coming back refreshed. We all have an interest in that. And so hopefully your rules, policies, practices, or procedures are providing for that sort of thing. Ethics, got to be one of my favorite topics. I probably speak on this issue more often throughout the year than any other for employees, elected officials, lawyers. I think this is just vital to governing well. I think it's vital to health and happiness. I don't know about you, but I know Sheila has heard me say many times, I am going to get through this life with my integrity intact. I hope to have a good long run down here on this earth and a good long profession, but I'm not going to compromise my ethics. Not for money, not for fame or glory. I care very deeply for my clients, not enough to violate my ethics. My professional ethics as a lawyer, Texas state law as ethics. In the cities where I serve, I am a city attorney, am subject to their local code of ethics. But then, like you, I walk around with my own code of ethics. I'm not going to be doing anything purposefully out there in the world that's going to embarrass Sheila or our daughters. My parents have passed on, God bless them. They were wonderful parents. I'm not going to embarrass their good names or disappoint them from above with how I've chosen to live my life, which means I'm not taking bribes. I'm not going to help assist corrupt officials. I'm not going to be doing insider trading, making financial investments or real estate investments because of the knowledge I picked up at City Hall by being city attorney. I'm not going to do those things. I'm going to follow my moral and ethical compass in addition to following the law. How about you? How about you? Did you get into public service to fatten your wallets and to further your family's finances? Or did you get in it to serve? If you're an employee, I hope you're getting compensated well. I hope you have good benefits. I certainly get paid for my public service, but I'm in it to serve. If money was all I was about, there are other kinds of law that I could be practicing, other things I could be doing that are much more lucrative than representing small towns and villages. But that was my choice. I chose to be in the public realm. I chose to help cities and towns and villages, and I'm very comfortable with how I am compensated for that. So I'm not going to be stealing. I'm not going to be looking for favors. How about you? Are you putting the public's interests above your own? Are you behaving in a trustworthy manner? Does your organization have safeguards, rules, procedures, disclosure forms, policies? Do you have an ethics review commission or an ethics board? I have had the honor of being trusted to be outside counsel to several cities for whom we are not city attorney, but the city attorney's office has hired us to help either do training on ethics or advise their board of ethics when somebody has a complaint filed. When you have a conflict of interest, are you abiding by state law and disclosing it and abstaining? Some of you do a tremendous job of saying, I've got no financial conflict, but I'm a volunteer on this board, and I feel uncomfortable advocating to give them a grant from our budget, so I'm going to go ahead and abstain. Do you sit at the dais and stare at people while you abstain and recuse yourself? Or do you step down from the dais and go get a cup of coffee or a breath of fresh air? I can't make you do those things, but I have to ask you to wonder, how does it look? Yes, legally in Texas, you can be wined and dined. If someone is wanting a contract, maybe they're already a vendor, and they take you out to a five-star meal with wine and dessert and the whole thing. It's legal in Texas. If they're with you, you are their guest. It's legal. How does it look? How's it going to look when it's on social media? Someone at the table next to you recognizes you and takes a quick photo. Click, click. And next thing you know, it's on nextdoor.com or Facebook or Instagram. Are you prepared to own it and explain it? If not, buy your own meal. Or instead of having a meeting over dinner or lunch, just reserve a conference room at City Hall and invite the city manager or the city planner to sit in with you. And let's just conduct business in a business-like way, not a social friendly way. I've made those mistakes. I've done all those things I've just described. I've done all those in the past. Perfectly legal. Felt kind of icky afterwards. Well, what are you doing that feels icky? Or maybe it's not you. You're on a Che webinar. You're fine. It's the person in the cubicle next to you at City Hall, or the person that sits next to you up at the city council table. Maybe you need to have those sorts of conversations. I've read a few books. I encourage you to do so on organizational ethics. And what the PhDs all have to say is the number one thing to help you have a more ethical organization. It's not having more rules. It's not having harsher punishment. It's having more conversations, talking about ethics, talking about the right thing to do, talking about your values, whether it's your department. Maybe you're over there in the streets department, and that's who you have this with. Maybe it's with your council members at a retreat. Maybe you're a city manager and you just get all your department heads together for coffee and donuts once a quarter and you talk about ethics. That's a great way to help convey your expectations, give them some pointers, and then listen to what they have to say. One of my favorite ethics stories, I know that Sheila and the gang have heard this one before, but it's just very meaningful to me, and so I like sharing it with others. When I was a young intern for the city of Lubbock, Texas, my first job was with the trash department. I was an intern in their solid waste management department. Wonderful group of people, best job job I have ever had. And one day my boss, the superintendent of solid waste, sent me with a city car and a city cell phone, and I drove to Abilene, Texas to research a sludge treatment facility. Yeah, it's exactly as glamorous as it sounds. And so I drove to Abilene and I inspected the facility, talked to the folks who worked there, interviewed the companies next door to see how was their experience being next door to this thing. Came back, turned in my report to the solid waste superintendent, handed over the keys to the city car and my receipts. And my boss asked me, well, how was it? How was everybody? How was the drive? Where'd you go to lunch? Interesting question. But my boss, like me, we like to eat. Well, I went to Whataburger. He's, oh my gosh, the folks at the sludge treatment plant took you to Whataburger? No, I went there by myself. They didn't ask you out to lunch? Oh, they did. They certainly did, but I declined. Well, why would you do that, Alan? Well, I have to write this report. I'm a city employee. My report goes to you. It goes to the public works director. It goes to the city manager. I didn't want someone thinking that perhaps that I had been influenced by them taking me out for lunch. So I did it for my own integrity. My boss got very stern with me at the moment and said, Alan, if I thought your professional judgment could be purchased for the cost of a meal, you would not be working here. Just blew my young mind. I'd never thought of things that way. And he was right. If you think you've got somebody that easily influenced, I question why they're on your team. Um, Nowadays, do we look at lunch as just someone buying a few minutes of your time, trying to lobby you? I don't know. I think the world's changed a little bit. I think that we're being held to a high standard these days. Sometimes lunch is just lunch. Sometimes it's more than that. Maybe you need to pay for your own meals. I don't know. But I think about what my old mentor had to say to me and the impact he made on me. And I ask you just to think about that yourselves, and how your organizations function. What are your expectations? Do your staff, do they know your expectations? Is it in writing? Is it something you ever talk about? If not, it warrants a good conversation. And while we all can find out what the rule is, and like, here's a line, there's a line, and we're going to cozy right up as close to it as possible. Maybe we should have been back over here instead. And that goes to the appearance of impropriety. It's impossible to do all the time. If we strive not just to comply with the law or the rules, but go above and beyond, so there's no reason for anyone to question our integrity, I think we're going to enjoy public service more. We're going to have a better experience in the public realm. And also, people are going to tend to trust us, and by relationship, our organizations just a little bit more. Trait number 7, lawful. All right, is this my absolute favorite? Ethical, lawful. It's hard to pick which one I care for the most, but my actual profession is lawyering. So I'm going to stick for the rule of law. Authority is exercised in accordance with established law. We as city officials, elected, appointed, volunteer, employees, we follow the law. The law gives us power. It gives us limitations on our power. It gives us duties, mandates that we have to comply with. And if you're going to be in this position, please tell me you understand the law that applies to you. And number 2, you're complying with that. And hopefully you've got a good lawyer representing you. There's lots of good ones in Texas. They should be part of your team. Your actions need to conform with Constitution, state statutes, regulations, judicial rulings. Regulations often can be meaning the rules adopted by an administrative agency. If you've got water or sewer, you're complying with TCEQ, which is indirectly also helping you comply with EPA, clean water, clean air, those sorts of things. There are rules promulgated by the Texas Comptroller's Office, and we sometimes look to those for purchasing. And then, of course, there's court opinions. Judges, appellate courts give us laws that we have to follow. Sometimes they change, sometimes they're overturned. That's why lawyers like me and our members of our firm, we've got a job keeping up with the changes in the law to help you understand what you can do, what you must do, what you absolutely are prohibited from doing. So conform with the law. When you adopt your own local laws, your ordinances, your orders, you have to follow the law in how you adopt your laws. Does it involve public hearings, public notices, certain findings you have to make on the record? You have to make sure to check those boxes before you try to enforce those rules or expect your citizens to voluntarily comply with them. Your code should be enforced objectively and consistently. You shouldn't just be picking and choosing the winners. That's not how government is supposed to work. You can't just enforce the rules against your arch enemy from high school and allow your friends to skip off scot-free. We have to try to bring some uniformity to those sorts of things. And can you just sort of weave it into the fabric of your organization that you have respect for the rule of law? That is foundational. That is fundamental to our representative democratic form of government in the United States and in our beloved state of Texas. And if you just can't quite show respect for the law, I have to question whether you're in the right position. Maybe public service is not for you. I want to join you as a lawyer in complying with the law in order to better serve our communities, enhance and protect their quality of life, provide the programs and services they want, need, and often desperately rely upon. If that's where you are, then you and your city attorney are going to be, in lockstep, in alignment with some cohesion. But rule of law and following that is absolutely fundamental to governing well. If you don't like your city's ordinances, talk to your city manager, your mayor, your city attorney about amending the ordinances. To just ignore them, disregard them, is not the right thing to do. If you are on planning and zoning and you don't like the ordinance, you can't change it, but you can make a recommendation to the city council. If you don't like a policy or procedure and you're an employee, have you talked to your supervisor? Have you spoken with the HR director? Maybe the city manager is open to adopting a different set of personnel policies. To just violate it and ignore it is the wrong thing to do. Let's do better. And the law should be a living, breathing thing that evolves and changes over time as circumstances change. The political winds may blow a different direction. That's okay. Let's revisit our rules and regulations. If you don't like what the state of Texas is mandating for your community, talk to your state representative, your state senator, write a letter to the governor. Maybe you're part of a special interest group that does some lobbying. Engage with them, empower them to speak on your behalf. But let's all comply with the law and help adopt and enforce reasonable rules of law. Number 8, innovative. Just the fact that we're talking about this over a webinar gives me chills. We hadn't done any webinars at our law firm or City Hall Essentials until the pandemic hit. And all of a sudden, Sheila had to pivot from putting on live in-person events with some frequency across the state to purchasing platforms and licenses for software that allows us to do this sort of thing. This is innovation in practice. We need to all embrace that. In law, just this morning, I handed a magazine, a legal magazine, to one of our newest lawyers, asking him to please help our law firm understand how we are going to benefit and better serve our clients through artificial intelligence, because I don't know how to do it. But I'm not going to stick my head in the sand and ignore it, saying, can't teach this old dog new tricks. Nope, I'm going to learn. And frankly, the American Bar Association has already said lawyers have an ethical obligation to use AI if it saves their client time, saves their client money, or gives them better results. However, we have lots of legal articles floating around where court opinions have been vacated months after they were approved because it turns out some lawyer in the dispute turned in pleadings, arguments that were written by AI, and there are phantom ghost cases cited that never existed. We have lawyers being sanctioned, not because they used AI to write a brief and it was full of garbage, but because they signed the brief without having verified that all the legal citations were legitimate. Ouch, that hurts. The world is spinning quickly. Innovation is a fact of life. It should be part of your city hall. Are you exploring new solutions, new methods? Have you created the sort of environment in your organization that encourages people to try new things? Can they be innovative without the risk you're going to embarrass them, shame them, fire them, discipline them every time they fall short? I think we have to sort of engage in that beta test, prototype, pilot project sort of attitude, and we have to do it quickly. First of all, I think the challenges we're facing are increasingly getting more difficult, and it takes more creativity to come up with the right answer. Second of all, if you want to attract the best and brightest of the young professionals that are coming of age, they're only going to go into organizations where there is creativity and you tolerate that little bit of risk that's necessary to try new things. Saying that we do it this way because it's always been done this way has zero appeal to them. And they're citizens also, they're our customers, but they're also our workforce. And as you are getting more gray, as I am, we're always looking forward to who's going to come in behind us and take care of these communities. Who's going to step in to fill these positions to help us in our organizations? Who's coming in now to help us with these challenges? Innovation is something that we have to facilitate, we have to foster, we have to welcome, we have to reward, and we have to be willing to take on just a little bit of measured risk. Are you doing that? I think you might be pleased, but when I look around a lot of city halls, I see a lot of folks who are doing things the way they've always done it. They're scared of technology. They don't question their procedures, their process, their protocols. It's time to do that. The situation, the times are calling for it. Let's start building those creative organizations. Number 9, economical. Visions are fantastic. Dreams are important. Plans are vital. They mean nothing if you have no money to support it. And so one of the first things new city council members elected in May are often required to do is jump into the budget process. If you're elected in November, you've got a little bit more time. But the budget, it's complicated. It might be boring, may not be the most exciting, glamorous thing you ever get to do. It's absolutely necessary. And if you're going to govern well, you have to take your budget seriously. You have to manage it prudently and make sure that your resources are handled in a responsible manner. We do have generally accepted accounting principles we have to comply with. We have a budget year. Typically for most Texas cities, it's October 1st is the start of your new budget. We are required by law to have an annual audit. We're required by law to make it public. Yet I'm saying that we have clients at our firm that go years without having their budget done. And then they have, their annual audit done. But yes, we've had clients that have forgotten to adopt their annual budget. It makes it very difficult to assess and collect taxes when you have not adopted your budget. And now there's new law in Texas that if you haven't had your audit done, you might be stuck with last year's budget, last year's tax rates. And so we have to pay attention to these things. And if you're an elected official who's hired a city manager, hired a city treasurer, maybe you have a CPA firm on your payroll, that is wonderful. You still have to supervise them. You have to manage them. You have to make sure they're doing the proper things, invest in their training and education so they keep up with all the new developments, and you make sure everything is in alignment with your budget, your expenditures, and those sorts of things. Are your financial practices aligning with your objectives? Earlier, we talked about goals. We talked about being effective. Is the money you're spending achieving anything that the people want? Are you actually getting bang for your buck? Are you having any sort of reports about, well, we spent a fortune doing that and things didn't turn out the way we thought they would? That's humbling, but maybe we do need to be a little humble in public service sometime when we talk about other people's money, because that's what most of this is. I don't know very many cities that have oil wells. Maybe they have. I do know some cities that actually do own property where natural gas is extracted from this earth, and so they get their money from that. Cool. I think that's somewhat rare. We typically are talking about property taxes, sales taxes. We're talking about franchise fees, permit fees, admin fees, fees for services, utility rates. People are paying us because it's taxes or because they're consuming services. Are we managing that money appropriately? Are we sharing with the public what the money accounts to, what it amounts to, what we're spending it on, giving them a chance to have a say? The truth in taxation laws in Texas demand that we have public hearings and public notices. Are you doing the bare minimum or are you going above and beyond? There are awards for transparency and budget awards. There are awards for creative budget preparation. I've got a client here in Central Texas that won an award for its budget where they actually took the people at City Hall in the different departments and had basically computer generated caricatures of them created, and they organized their budget book, which is that thick, into a comic book themed document. Easy to understand, easy to find data, and as you flip through it online or the hard copy, it's actually kind of fun to see the Public Works Department, the Finance Department, Code Enforcement Department as superheroes, as action heroes. What a clever thing to do. That goes back to innovation and creativity. taking a document that's terribly difficult and often mind-numbingly boring and too complex, even for sometimes your city attorney to understand, and trying to breathe new life into it. So you can be economical, responsible for your money, and also communicate it to the public in a way that's transparent and helps them understand how their money is being spent. It's the public's money. You are just a custodian of it. So finding ways to communicate about it, not just at budget time, but throughout the year, is a fantastic way to show that you are economical and serving the ninth trait. If you read the article in last month's TML magazine about Ransom Canyon, you will see, well, they hit several of the traits with one action. The Texas Municipal League, a fine organization, very thankful for all that they do. They have a relatively new service where they have financial professionals that work for TML, and you can contract with TML to make those financial professionals available to your city, town, or village under contract. Town of Ransom Canyon did that to help them with their financial management. Okay, that shows that they care about being economical in Ransom Canyon, but also shows that they're being innovative in Ransom Canyon. They check two traits at least with that one. How about you? What have you done to be innovative or more transparent, more effective, and economical in your town? Some of your actions, some of your choices will absolutely tick off more than one trait. Or maybe that's your own little internal score sheet. You can take these 10 Texas traits and use that on a regular basis to see how many of them are satisfied by a new change. And it may not be a dramatic change. It may not be an expensive change. It can still be a meaningful modification in how you operate, provide services, and run your programs. All right, we got about 9 minutes left, and we hit the final trait. We're on 10 of 10. I mentioned at the beginning, but we have to stop with accountability. First of all, you got to think that we are all accountable to someone. I don't recall there being a time when I didn't feel that I am accountable to God for this life that I've been given and the many, many gifts with which I've been blessed. I am certainly accountable to my family. Everything I do in my personal life and in my business life as a public official reflects upon our family, and it affects my ability to earn and provide for my family. I'm responsible to members of our law firm, people who are very bright, highly educated, and have so many choices. They chose to come here. They chose to join our team. And I am so grateful for that. I don't want to do anything that would shame them, make them regret the fact that they joined our law firm. I don't want to do anything to cause us to lose business. And all of a sudden, we're having a hard time making payroll. How can they pay their mortgage or car payment? I have no shortage of accountability. Oh, I'm legally accountable. I got malpractice insurance. We have coverage here at the firm for malpractice. Oh, there's the state bar. There's my law license right over there over my shoulder. I worked hard for it. I want to keep that. And in the cities where I'm city attorney, I'm accountable under their code of ethics. It's really easy to hire our law firm. It's really easy to fire our law firm and hire another lawyer who kind of does the same thing, just slightly different. All sorts of accountability out there in the world. To whom are you accountable? What holds you and your organization accountable? And do you take responsibility for what you do and what you don't do? And then do you talk about it? So again, it's sort of under the transparency prong. It's also under the ethical prong to let the people know what you've done and open yourselves up to public scrutiny. Rather than be afraid of it, embarrassed of it, mad when it happens, I think we need to just embrace it. It's going to happen. It's part of the process. And when you do something like the city that dealt with ICE putting their trailer in their parking lot, be prepared to be praised, be prepared to be criticized on both sides. How dare you let ICE be on your parking lot? How dare you not embrace ICE and order the police department to allocate resources to go out in the field and help them? Sometimes you're darned if you do, darned if you don't. And that's okay in this sort of system of government. We need to expect it, prepare for it, talk about it. Maybe you can be your own little internal support group there in your organization. Maybe if you're a mayor on today's webinar, you reach out and make friends with other mayors that can relate to you and help you when you're being bashed in the media or on social media or live and in person at your next meeting. That's all part of being accountable. The outcomes of our decisions matter. I know that I feel responsible for every email I write, every legal opinion I give. When I sign the bottom of an ordinance or a contract, I'm putting the good faith, goodwill, and financial health of my family and my law firm on those documents, possibly triggering our insurance coverage. Do you have procedures or any sort of sanctions in your organization for misconduct or irresponsible behavior? Local codes of conduct, rules of procedure, and ethics ordinance. I have a client with a very simple ethics ordinance that's asked me to draft a more expanded, more comprehensive ethics ordinance. All right, I'm happy to do that and to have that conversation with the community, see if that's what they want. It was a city manager friend of mine that added this comment that if you outsource your services, and many of us do, have you put anything in the contract with them to make sure they are publicly accountable? Do you contract for your engineering services, your trash collection? Somebody is running your city's swimming pool. Do they know that customer service matters to you? Complying with the law matters to you? Being transparent matters to you? If they're not oriented toward doing those sorts of things, they may not be legally required to do it, but maybe you put it in your contract with them, and aha, they're held to the same standard as your city employees providing some of your city services. I think that's a novel, important idea, and I don't think the 10 traits would be complete without mentioning that. So I'm really glad that my colleague contributed that one. And so being accountable is where we end, but it's sort of where you begin. Occasionally I get newly elected officials. I have one that just was elected in January in a runoff election to the city council. First thing I do after they take the oath is sit down and have an orientation session. What is the office of city attorney? Where do I get my power from? What are my duties and obligations? And I go through that, but I also take the opportunity to tell them the basics of open meetings, open records, ethics, and talk to them about accountability. And I listen. To whom do they think they're accountable? Do they have a good understanding of that? Do they know who is overseeing everything our cities, counties, and school districts do? Sometimes they're well informed. Sometimes really smart, newly elected officials are quite naive, and they're shocked to hear how much oversight we are subject to and all the different agencies that we are accountable to. Let's have those conversations. Let's not have it be a surprise. Let's talk about it with some frequency. I believe strongly that just talking about it will help us in getting better compliance and avoiding having enforcement actions brought against us as an organization or individually. So now that we've run through these 10 Texas traits, I've given you an explanation and some examples. Have you been thinking this whole time, how am I going to take this information that Alan's just shared and make it fit my town, my city, my county, my special district? I hope that's where you are. If not, let me wind down by challenging you to do that. If you like the 10 traits, maybe you should share it with your public, because once they know about it, they're going to start monitoring you. They're going to start viewing you and hold you accountable to some of these things. That's a risk. But are you really afraid of the 10 Texas traits of good government? When you do any sort of performance evaluations of your people or your organization or of a particular project, maybe you can hold it up and see how it would fare compared to the 10 traits. Do you have retreats with your city council or maybe your department heads? Maybe it's a workshop just for planning and zoning. You can bring it up. Do you have colleagues at the town next door, or you meet monthly as a mayor with the county judge? What does the county judge think of this? Maybe you're the first time they've ever heard of this. When you do strategic planning, should you build these into your strategic plans? Many of you have rules for your city council meetings or local personnel policies. You could weave these in to those local things. I know of at least 4 cities in Texas that have used either a resolution or an ordinance to adopt them. That was not my idea. I was blown away when they did it, and I am so proud they thought it was worth it. So the town of Ransom Canyon was the first city to do it, followed soon thereafter by the city of Post, Texas, Smyre, Texas. Those are out in West Texas and in the Panhandle. And then here in Central Texas, the village of Valente on beautiful Lake Travis. Small general law city adopted the 10 traits and is using them every day to do a better job of governing and operating their municipality. Maybe you want to do that, not as the final thing you do, adopt it and forget it, but as the first thing you do to then start improving how you go about doing things. And if you've already been doing this with frequency, adopt the 10 traits and pat yourself on the back. Have it as an agenda item at your city council meeting. Take a 15-minute break during your city council meeting to share some cake and punch with your citizens and your staff and your council to celebrate how well you've done in terms of the 10 Texas traits. And then, of course, Sheila and I, City Hall Essentials and our firm, continuing education and training is vital. It's part of being competent, which is one of the 10 traits. You don't need to come to City Hall Essentials or hire my law firm every time you need training. You can do training yourself. You can take the material, the handouts that we've given you today, and have your own training program. And maybe you invite the town next door, or maybe you get the county together and you, the county and your local school districts have a luncheon and you lead the conversation about the 10 Texas traits, because they could equally apply to all those organizations. And instead of just being a student, as you are today, you become a teacher or a preacher, and you're out there preaching the gospel of the 10 Texas traits of good government and how we all should be trying to incorporate them and do just a little bit better. And if you are, then hey, there's good news. I mentioned that cool 12-sided trophy that they have in Europe. We have our own trophy in Texas. This is brand new. This was just announced last week, but it's live. It is a thing. There is now the Balanoff Good Government Award in Texas. And for now, it's only available to Texas cities. Maybe in the future, they will expand to include special districts, counties, other local governments. We shall see. It is presented by the Texas CPM program, the Hobby Center at Texas State University, and the Central Texas chapter of the American Society for Public Administration. If you are a city that's already adopted the 10 traits and you are implementing them and you are weaving them and interjecting them into how you govern, you might want to try to apply for this award. Applications are available, and application window closes on April 1st. That's not a joke. That's a serious deadline. And the awards will be given out at the end of May. I've got nothing to do with the awards or the selection process, but I'm happy to say that our law firm and City Hall Essentials are sponsors. So we are contributing financially to help make the awards possible. But we're super excited the folks at the CPM program have embraced this. They've taken it over, and they chose to name the awards after Marilyn and Howard Balanoff, who are 2 tremendous leaders in the public service area of Texas, nationally and frankly internationally, through their work at Texas State University and the Texas CPM program. We love and adore Howard and Marilyn. They are friends and mentors and heroes of ours, and just so tickled that the hosts of this award chose to name the award after them. And so I hope they feel honored. And if your city thinks you're eligible, go for it. And if you don't think you're ready yet, that's okay. Take the next year to work the process, work the program, have meetings, have conversations, take action, and then apply for it next year. I think it would look nice on your trophy case. And gosh, might your citizens just be a little bit more proud of their organization if their organization receives this type of accolade. I'm happy to have been involved with it. I'm proud of all my friends and colleagues and co-workers who've contributed to it. I think it's a great thing for Texas and great thing for our Texas cities. So you may want to check into that award and see if perhaps it's something that you're eligible for. So Sheila, I know it's 12:04. It's time for us to wrap it up. People have been listening for 2 whole hours. It's time for lunch. I will close this session as I closed all, which is a challenge. And that challenge is to join us in taking care of Texas one town at a time. I hope you found this information useful. It was my honor to present it. You have it now. Make it your own and go do with it as you will. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you, Alan. That was a lot of information in 2 hours. But as you have shared, we feel passionately about this. And so sounds like cities have a great place to start, and they have lots of information to help them in this process. Thank you to our training sponsors who allow us to bring these trainings to the people in the great state of Texas. So thank you for that. We do have one question, Alan. And if anybody else has any other questions, please post them now. Let's see. Are there some small tangible goals to accomplish that the cities can do to check off some of the tasks that lead us to being the better government?
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the easiest ones that you can work on to be better and further your good government goals is the transparency prong. Think about how you handle open records requests. Are you only making data available when someone asks for it? Or are there things that you think the public would want to know that you should be voluntarily putting out there, perhaps through your website or some other way? I mentioned, the client that I have that did more notice for zoning than they had to. How about you? Are you only doing the state law limits on when to put notices in the newspaper or to mail notices? Or can you do extra? And I mentioned using technology, which that clicks under the innovation prong too. When someone says they're interested in a project in your town, maybe a new development's going in, a subdivision's going in, and they're concerned about how it's going to affect traffic, did you ask them to sign up and give you their email address? And then they showed up to one public hearing. Now you can email them every time you have a public hearing. Or if there is the plat got modified or the development agreement's being amended, well, you've got an email list now where you can email those folks who expressly told you they care about the project. I find that to be very uncommon in many of the organizations I work with. Why not? You can put it on your website. If you're interested in the new renovations to the rodeo ground, sign up here and we'll put you on our mailing list. That costs you very little money and very little staff time. But wow, what a great way to engage your citizens. There are little steps like that you can take on each of these prongs. And I do encourage you to start small, do it incrementally over time. But if you truly care about embracing the 10 traits, take these small steps and then track your progress, monitor your progress, write it down. And who knows, a year from now, 2 years from now, you might feel like you're worth getting a trophy. And so you go online and you apply for the Balanoff Award and you list the specific steps you've taken over time to show the universe you care about good government and you're committed to doing a little bit better. And we can all do just a little bit better. Why not?
Absolutely. And I thought you would find this interesting. Our colleague, Andy Quitner, who is a city attorney, shares that a 12-sided figure is a dodecahedron.
Dodecahedron. Okay. I was an English major, Andy, but don't worry, I minored in political science. So I know nothing about math or geometry. Versus Andy Quitner, a member of our firm, former city attorney Seguin, he was a chemistry major, for heaven's sakes. I bet he didn't even have to look that up. That's why we love having you on the team, Andy. Thank you. I probably should write that down and practice pronouncing it for next time.
Same. Well, thank you, Alan, for sharing all this information. And thanks to each of you who have joined us today. A couple of little bits of information. I sent an email out to everyone with some follow-up information, so please read that. And it's chock full of next steps. Also, everyone always asks, when can I view the recording? Well, once we hit the stop button on this webinar, it takes go to several hours to get the recording to me. And then it takes a little while longer for me to park it on a stage and then get everyone the link. And so it could be tomorrow before I can get that to you, but I will. And so thank you everyone again for joining us today, and stay safe out there. Thank you.
Bye, y'all. Good luck.